It means a lot to us both that you've come out and given us your time, and for that I thank you, and I'm sure Nate thanks you as well. I've been in Lovettsville for the past 22 years. Before that, I lived a little bit north of Leesburg, and one of the things that I've always done in my life, if I've been thinking hard about a particular something, I'll take myself for a drive, and Western Loudoun certainly provides a great opportunity to get out and see some beautiful scenery and settle down and think. And I kept running across this little town of Lovettsville with its own museum and a sign on the school that even back then said, "The school that begins with love." That hasn't changed in all the time that I've been here in Lovettsville. Now, there have been other things that have changed, and I've seen my share of them. I haven't seen as much as the people who were born and raised here, that's certain. But I've seen enough. I grew up in all over the country. My dad was in the Air Force. I came to Virginia when I was in high school. Dad was at the Pentagon. I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, and my folks retired back to Ohio, and I said, I don't want to go back to the Midwest. I raised my family here. My two boys now are almost grown. One is about to graduate from college. One is about to graduate from high school. And while I was raising those boys, I did many different things. I started a small carpentry business called Red Truck Carpentry. Ran that for several years, did light renovations. Some of the porches on Broadway have some of my work, re-shoring up the beams and columns. I also ran the Cub Scout pack, and 70 boys or so were in the pack when I was running it then. I ran Shamrock Music Store for about 7 years. Started off there as the teacher of guitar and ukulele, and eventually became the manager as I just continued to take on more responsibility to make that shop run efficiently and smoothly. And then finally I started a career in real estate not too long ago. Took my exam and passed it on the first try. Won Rookie of the Year in my office my first year, and doubled my volume. And no, it wasn't zero sales in the first year. Doubled my volume in the second year. I'm really pleased to be here. I hope to demonstrate to you guys that I'm not afraid of hard work, and that I'm a good listener, and that I have what's my best heart is for Lovettsville. It's the best place I've ever lived. I'm sure there are a lot of you out here who will agree that that's true.
I have been in town now for going on 5 years at this point. While all 5 years I've been in town, I've been heavily involved with everything the town's doing. Everything from jumping right into the Planning Commission and being the Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. Currently serving on council now, multiple committees in the town, everything from information flow committees down to helping out with Oktoberfest, Mayfest, being out with Bobby, hanging up on top of the lifts, hanging lights up at Mayfest and flags and everything else, tearing down, moving porta potties and latrines with tractors and everything else. All the fun things, and even as far down as being the 3-time pie eating champion of Lovettsville. So we are looking for a new champion this year to take that one on. Some of what Kris said, we want to thank you all for coming out. This is a huge turnout. I was bragging to Kris Consaul earlier, and also to Chris Hornbaker in the back, that we've got a larger crowd, almost by double than what the council candidates had. So with the short notice and everything else, thank you all for coming out, and now thank you all for setting this up and going through this. I really want to thank, I've got my mother in the back, as well as my wife, Lizzie Fontaine. We've been together for 18 years now. We've got 2 kids. We're both active parishioners at St. James Catholic Church out in St. James the Greater in Charlestown, West Virginia. We lived in Martinsburg, West Virginia before we decided to move into Lovettsville. I am a government employee, and I do work right in the heart of DC. So I do take the MARC train to and from almost every morning. And the 2.5-hour commute from Martinsburg was too far. We were actually looking at building a development across the river, decided that we couldn't live in Maryland, just taxes and other reasons, so I decided to come across the bridge. And every time we came over, the sun was always out, the birds were always chirping.
It's Camelot.
It's Camelot, it's Mayberry, it's all that stuff. So, I mean, we truly have absolutely enjoyed and adore this town. My wife and I pour our heart and everything else into this. We're using a lot of the experiences that we've had from other municipalities and other places. We've been very active in veterans organizations. Before that, before I ended up taking a government job, I was in the Air Force doing maintenance on F-22s and F-16s and fighter aircraft across Langley Air Force Base in Richmond, Virginia, as well as even going to school down in Newport News, Virginia, at Christopher Newport University. We've got a great opportunity. We've got a lot of property left in town that's currently zoned as commercial light industrial, and I'd love to see those develop into something that supports the local community, supports local businesses. Everything from artisan shops. You've got the Painted Pig. You've got the new coffee shops in town, Backstreet Brews. The new development, the commercial development here that's gone in. We're down to just 2 spaces left to rent that. I think there's a great opportunity to continue to use events and other opportunities to drive and continue to build the economic base here in Lovettsville and reduce a lot of the constraints and pressure on the residents that live in town between water rates, between taxes and everything else that comes along with it. If you get more commercial properties in, they're going to use more water, which means there's an opportunity to reduce water rates across the board for residents in town. That's obviously the biggest one I've got. The other ones are ensuring that the events do continue in town. Like I mentioned before, those are economic drivers for this town. If we lose the events, we end up with just a sleepy little dot on the map where people drive through and go, I think there was a town back there. I'm not sure what was there. I mean, the events drive Andy's and the other restaurants here in town. The last 2 events, they've had to go off to Costco to end up purchasing more supplies because they've run out midway through the events, right? The events are absolutely needed for the town. And the good news is most of them, if are not already self-sufficient, they're becoming that way where the town's not pouring more money into them in some cases. Love Summer is a perfect example this year here. Love Summer is going to be self-sufficient. There's cheers from the crowd. I'd also want to ensure that this town stays the Mayberry small town feel that we all have here. There is a lot of development, a lot of build-up that's happened from a residential perspective. The good news is we're almost at max capacity for residential build-out at this point. While I was on the Planning Commission, I ended up pushing for a change to the annexations and the annexation zoning requirements to limit the ability of developers to come in with new annexed land and putting a home for every quarter of an acre, which you'd see more large development and everything else coming in. We have a significant responsibility from a tax base as well as everything else to stay under a population of 3,500 people. And I believe everybody on council, everybody on the Planning Commission, I think Kris as well, we all have a desire to keep this a small town where everybody knows each other. This morning I went to Bonnie's for breakfast and we knew everybody inside Bonnie's. It's like the cheers when you walk in. This has been an amazing town.
My top priority, if I'm elected mayor for you folks, is to be the ambassador to help town residents understand why the town is doing the things it's doing. There's always a disconnect. It's like a giant game of telephone. The town council passes a resolution and by the next morning it's all over town as something twisted and a little different. I want to find ways that we can address that. I want to find ways that we can improve our town's engagement with the civic process. And if that doesn't sound like a boring sentence, I don't know what does. How are you going to improve the town's civic engagement? I'm hoping to get out there, walk the neighborhoods, even after the election, and find out what's on people's minds. Now, it's hit or miss. Sometimes you're home, sometimes you're at your Little League game, sometimes you're at your church, sometimes you're out grocery shopping. But I'm going to be available to help you address whatever concerns that you will have with the town. I work from home. I run my real estate business from home. My schedule is mine. I can pretty much set my appointments to make sure that I have plenty of time for town business. I want to make sure that people in town have an accurate perception of what's going on in town. I want to continue also in improving our pedestrian and bicycling access to points around the town. I want to make sure that this is a beautiful and charming place to live and that residents are happy to be here, tourists are happy to come and eat in our restaurants, and everybody comes out for the town events.
What's one thing this town council has done really well that you like? And what's one thing that you wish they would have done different?
I want to give a hats off to the current town council for adjusting their accounting processes so that we have dedicated revenue streams going into dedicated expenses. Back in the day, we had a big general slush fund, and you'd pay whatever bill was coming up, but you weren't really paying attention to the bill that was coming next week. That never happens to me personally, right? You never, ever get your signals crossed in your checkbook when you're trying to set stuff aside to accomplish something next week, but you got to pay this one today. So the new revenue streams and the accounting practices to keep track of that, I think, is a vast improvement. I'm really pleased that the town government has moved in that direction. And I also want to give a shout out to the Herculean effort that the town did to get the council meeting minutes up to date and to implement an audio-visual capture system so that we can go back to a meeting and see what was said and what was decided. What I would like to do differently is something I've already spoken on. I'd like to figure out a way that we can get more people at the meetings, more people weighing in on decisions so that they can be a part of the decision-making process rather than being relegated to reaction when we're finished.
Well, being on council, right, a lot of the great things have been while I've been either on council or the planning commission itself. This year, some of the great things the council is doing this year is they're looking at the taxes and they're looking at the fees overall to see where we can again lighten load on residents in town and diversify some of the revenue streams that we've got. They've also done an amazing event, planning and coordination. Every event here in this town is run through complete volunteers. In the years past, they tried to have a paid events coordinator, and that did not work out, and it has now gone back to entire volunteer-run organizations. The amount of time and effort that the council, the mayor, the planning commission, members of the community put in to ensure that we've got one of the top Oktoberfests in the nation, I think we're in the top 20 at this point, is astounding. So kudos to everybody who helps out with those. One of the items, I think, Kris, you and I are on similar paths, even as far as opening up the decision points for what the council is deciding on and the planning commission is counting on. For my appointment to council, one of the things I brought up in the interview process, and it's been too cold since I've been on council, was to end up having a forum, off days, where you get a planning commissioner, the town manager potentially, as well as a council person, to sit over at the Walker Pavilion and just be there with my kids playing Frisbee. And if people want to come up and ask questions, it'll be a set time. People can come by and ask questions. It's not a formal meeting because we don't have the number of people there that would require us to announce a formal meeting. But it would open up some of those discussions and allow people access to the folks who are making the decisions based off of what your recommendations are and what you'd like to see the town continue to be. I absolutely enjoy saying that this year we're looking at reducing taxes, reducing expenditures that we've got overall. This is going to be a big year. Sam Fintz, who has been an amazing town manager for this town, we've called him out of retirement numerous times now. His wife has finally called him up and said, "You're done." So he will be retiring here formally real soon, so the town's going to have to make a decision on hiring a new town manager, as well as some other decisions as far as town staff go. There are opportunities to end up saving expenses overall through those processes as well. But really, I think, Kris, you and I both, the transparency, the town does work to get communication out to folks. We've got the town mayor's email every Friday. There's the Facebook page. There's other avenues, the meetings, the live streaming, which is a great addition as well. So the transparency is there.
What are the challenges coming up for the town on the utility side, and are utility rates going down anytime soon?
Sure. So again, being involved in the planning commission and town council has allowed me great access to what's going on in town for the past 4 or 5 years. What the town has coming up with the utilities perspective, everybody saw the 39% increase overall with the utility rates for the water sources over the past 3 years or so. That was in large part due to a lot of the aging infrastructure and not having enough in our reserves to fund projects that are absolutely needed for the town. From a water supply capacity, we're well in excess of what our supplies need to be. It's the sewage side that we end up, and the treatment side on that. We have a lot of water inflow from the stormwater management into our treatment plants, which gets us in trouble in some cases with the Virginia Department of Health. There are a lot of large projects that are coming up in the next 6 to 7 years. Everything from a water tower, if the fire hall is annexed, putting in down there, as well as an equalization basin on the other side of town. It's almost $3 million of expenditures over a 3-4 year period, about 6 years from now. The great news is the town is on an absolutely correct path of ensuring that we're meeting our reserve requirements and socking money away where it's available. Any of the surpluses coming in, we're not spending it on buying gators, and we're not spending it on buying other big items. We're putting the money away, and that's been a priority from this year's budget sessions. Council, we all push to ensure money is being socked away into the reserve accounts to continue to fund large projects that we have coming up. To also boost the utility fund portion, this year the recommendation from council to Sam Fintz was to move over the rental fees that we get from cellular towers on our water, from the cellular antennas on our water towers. That's a significant amount of money that we've now moved back into our utility fund overall as well. The town at this point every year, we were transferring, to your point, we were transferring over $100,000 every year from our general fund to our utility fund. That's also stopped. So I think we're on a right path to be able to fund, as well as ensure that we can get loans if we need to. Obviously, it's a fine balance to do between them, but if you're going to spend $3 million in a 3-4 year period to do large upgrades, the town does not have revenue to cover that, so there would be some debt incurred from that. And the town is setting ourselves up. We're looking into the future. We've got consultants that have come in. They've done reserve studies. They've done debt surveys to see what the projects are going to cost overall. So.
Excellent. So if you want to know if your water rates are going to go down anytime soon, I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm going to tell you no. They're probably not going to go down anytime soon. But right now, the town council and the mayor have done a fantastic job of putting the brakes on the rate increases, right? So a few years back, there was a study done to see, do we have enough money in our fundings to do the big improvement projects that we need to do? And the answer was no. We didn't. And the consultants made a recommendation to increase rates over a 5-year period at a little sliding scale. I think the first year they were going to go up 12%, then it was going to go down, still going to go up at the end. And they had this number that they said we needed to do in order to fund the projects that we were going to need to do to keep our system in regulation. The current town council made the decision to revise that schedule of rate increases, and they upped that first year from 12 to 16%. And they did this so that they could front load the savings accounts, so that they could front load the reserves. This year the rates are going up only 3%. It's a long way from the 16% that they did a few years back. Are we ever going to get them to go down? I don't know. Maybe. Once we get the redundancy in the water line system that we need, once we make sure that our treatment plant is able to maintain regulations, maybe. But the cost of clean water is the cost of clean water. And what I want to make sure is that you guys get a chance to understand why the rates are what they are. I hope we can lower them. I really do. And the increases have lowered, and we're about to put in some new meters that I think are going to both be fantastic and maddening. They're going to be fantastic because they're going to have a more accurate measurement of your water use. They're going to be maddening because they're going to have a more accurate representation of your water use, and it might catch smaller leaks and flows that the old meters haven't. And you might see a bigger charge on your bill when those new meters get put in place. But in the long run, having those new meters are going to reduce the work hours needed to read the meters. It will reduce the opportunity for the town to have to make an estimated reading, take a guess at what your bill is supposed to be. Utilities are expensive. There's no way around that. We're doing the best. The town is doing the best that it possibly can. There's no graft in our utility system. It is what it is. And I hope that we can work together to understand exactly why it is, what it is, and over time, make sure that the utility costs to you are a reasonable part of your household budget.
The town's done a lot of things over the years to promote businesses, bring businesses in. They've had committees and they've had task force and all kinds of things. And it seems like now there's never been more opportunities than right now for businesses to come in. So what can the mayor, what can the town council do differently or better to help with that right now?
Nate said a few minutes ago we're never going to see a Walmart here. And I think that's fine, right? I don't think any of us really want a big box store here. Well, you're in luck, because the population of our town and the population of the surrounding county is never going to draw a big box store like that here. It's not going to fit. It's not going to have the traffic. What we can do to bring the smaller businesses in, the services that we see and the restaurants that we see that have come into the new sound center, is to make the process of a business owner to get into town, get set up for business, and make that process easy as we can make it. I'm not saying, slide them something and make them get here. I'm saying, let's process the applications as quickly as we can. Josh, our zoning manager, does a great job with that right now. Let's keep that going. Let's make Lovettsville, make sure that everybody knows that we have a reputation for getting things done quickly and fairly. We can induce businesses to come here mostly by good service. We can increase small businesses to come here by continuing to beautify the town. Let me just ask, if you had a small business to set up, do you want to set it up in the old mini mart on Loudoun Street, or do you want to set it up over here where people can see you and they can walk to you? When we build things like the town center, we show business owners that we are committed to their success. And we need to continue to do the projects to commit to the success of the people who will come here and return a 7-to-1 investment on every dollar in infrastructure that we spend. A business is going to, on average, give us $7 back. It's a good trade, and I think we should pursue it.
Broadway and everything else, it's been outstanding. The Broadway build-up that we've had continues to drive business and have people the walkability for the town. That's a very important part. That's what the town and the comprehensive plan and everything else is looking for, is to ensure that we've got sidewalks across town. The Broadway improvements have beautified the downtown portion and the corridor. So what we're looking for is those to continue to build out and drive businesses here in town. If you have a town that does not invest in itself, you don't have growth in the town. You end up losing a lot of the business development opportunities that you have come in. It looks like the town is just waiting for people to come in, or doesn't have money, or the town's on a downhill slide. The sidewalks are a great part of continuing to do that in strategic places. Continuing to, again, the events are a huge driver. If you can end up telling folks that you've got 50,000 people that end up showing up for one day, 2-day Oktoberfest event, that is large, and you can continue to drive things in here for those items. And those are events that are now not costing the town almost anything, or even as free in some cases for the town. You can continue to hold business forums. We've had other opportunities in the past. We've had the We're In Committee. We've had other businesses. You could end up standing up a Chamber of Commerce in town. There's a lot of other things to ensure that the town businesses feel like they have a say and input in what goes on in the town. It's simple to make these changes to end up bringing people in. And the good news, the town has already implemented and has started a lot of these. So we're on the right path to continue to drive and bring businesses to town.
How do we accommodate this growth and retain the small town feel?
So absolutely. One of the great things is, you had mentioned before, the Boy Scout and Girl Scouts and American Heritage Groups and everything else that's in town. You end up keeping this by keeping the events that show that we're still small town America in the Mayberry portion. Being on the Love America committee for for some time now, we've got all the Memorial Day events, the 3rd of July events, and everything else that's out here on the town green and the Veterans Memorials. You continue to keep the Mayberry feel by, again, continuing having the events, so people get out and talk to their neighbors and see each other. You always have the block parties going out through town where people are just outside talking to their friends and neighbors. The good news is it's getting much warmer. Last Saturday was outstanding in the 85, 82 degrees, and everybody was outside. Everybody's at the parks. Everybody's going to be at the new community center park that goes in with the baseball fields and everything else. If you were out there for the Upper Loudoun Little League opening day ceremony, another outstanding event that the town supports to ensure we have folks out there. It was amazing to see the number of folks that come out, and it's outstanding to see the kids going by down Loudoun Street on the back of pickup trucks and trailers, waving and throwing candy at folks.
I'm still picking that candy up, by the way.
Yes. Sorry for the folks on Loudoun Street, but yeah.
It's all right.
But you do have a couple of those kids, they're baseball players, so they got some arms too. I think
they do. You have to go out with a mitt and a mask.
Yeah, because it comes through quick. But yeah, continuing to have engagement in the community, continuing to the outstanding volunteerism, community support, having service organizations opening up in the community is all amazing, and that's what keeps this small town, the Mayberry feel that we've got. This town has gone through significant growth, yet has been able to maintain the ability for neighbors to know each other, talk to each other out in the streets, and have a great time. And that's what it's all about. We all go to the same elementary school. If you've got kids in school, it's outstanding. There's no other place, I think everybody agrees, there's no other place I think any of us would rather be than here in Lovettsville.
I agree with you, 100%. I've always loved Lovettsville, always loved being here. So let's talk a little bit about a small town feel. right? Because everybody says, it's got this great small town feel. How do you put that into words? What is that? What is it? I think for me, a small town feel, a Mayberry feel, if you will, is about, first off, knowing who your neighbors are, right? The next thing is you're recognized when you walk into the coffee shop or the mechanic. They know who you are, right? They know that you're going to buy that king-size Snickers bar again, right? Oh, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? A small town feel is a place where you go ahead and pick up the trash on your neighbor's fence line on Lovettsville Windy Trash Day because you want to help out. Not because you're mad, oh, look at this trash, but because you want to help out, right? They do the same thing for you and probably have when your recycling bin has ended up in their yard. And it's helping out when there's a tragedy. I just am astounded at the way the people in this town will rally when there's a disaster. Or even when somebody's just having a little trouble making ends meet, their neighbors are right there. They'll help out. Now there are things that help keep this feel going, and there are things that are a hindrance to it. A hindrance to a small town feel is a neighborhood with nothing but 6-foot privacy fences. A hindrance is when you have roads that are too busy to push your stroller while you're walking your dog across the street. A hindrance are lot sizes that are just too big that you actually cannot talk to your neighbor in a normal tone of voice when you're both getting in your car to get to the first day Little League game, right? Things that can help a small town feel include narrower streets that fit the size of our population, streets that are lined with passable sidewalks, architecture that has front porches or gathering spots, town parks and restaurants, places where we can see and be seen is critical. Having the town festivals that give us a chance to go, you should come and live in Lovettsville because we get to do this, and we get to do this, and we get to do this, and then we get to walk home. So there are things that any town can do to help this. And the tool for that is zoning. The tool for that is making sure that we have the opportunity to bring in some businesses to support our tax base, and yet we make sure that there are sidewalks and bike paths to these new places. The tool for this is making sure that we structure any kind of architectural, we put a new height requirement in, that your house can't be higher than 35 feet. Okay, that's great. I don't think anybody's going to want to build a 7-story condo unit, and that's fine. We don't have the population for that. But the town has done, and I think will continue to do, these kinds of things so that we can know each other. And for me, that's small town, right there.
Town and the county government have wrestled on some issues, schools, the community center, getting the park built. How do you think that relationship is right now, and what would you do to improve it between the town and the county government?
That's an excellent question. Any town government's going to have to work with its local county jurisdiction. How are you going to improve it? Where does it stand now? I think it's gotten a little bit better over the years, but we are near nothing, right? When I first moved to Lovettsville, I'd tell people where I was. I'd tell them it would take me 25 minutes to go see a movie, and they, like, you don't live near anything. And that's exactly why I like it. So Lovettsville might tend to be a little forgotten area of Loudoun County because we don't have a Route 7 to bring people here and past. What we can do is to continue to foster our relationships with Gary Higgins or whoever is elected to be on the Board of Supervisors. We can talk to other towns in the Western Loudoun area, find out what they do best, and bring that home and help our citizens out with that.
Again, I think a lot of this is having the relationships already built with those individuals, and actually attending the Board of Supervisors meetings, having them come out to attend the events and everything else in town. So Gary Higgins was out here for the Upper Loudoun Little League thing. Got a chance to talk to him. She was here for a little bit on a couple of other items. We've also got other elected officials that were out here as well. So you've got to continue, it's not just the county, but you've also got to be able to communicate with folks who are higher up in the chain, everything else that goes along with those. I would not necessarily agree that the relationship with the entire county at this point has gotten much better. The county and the town are going back and forth with the sheriff's office regarding enforcement of town codes and county ordinances within the town limits, right? So that requires folks who are involved in the town to continue the discussion, because it's on the mayor to be the ambassador along with the town manager to continue to coordinate to try to get a tri-party agreement with the sheriff's office to get them out here to enforce county and town ordinances here in town. We have gotten better in some places. The council invited the entire Board of Supervisors out recently to have them come out and come to multiple of our events, which has been great as well. We also, I also stood up the Coalition of Loudoun Towns, where I got all the planning commission chairs together to go through from all the towns in Loudoun County to give a unified voice back to the county on multiple items, even including the keeping 15 as the urban sprawl line coming out west. Right, so you need folks who are already engaged with the towns in Loudoun County, because you've got to have a voice back. We are not, in most cases, not the priority for the county. It's everything to the west, to the east. And you've got to already have those relationships built and coordinated with those individuals to continue to drive the relationship building and what's best for the residents of Lovettsville. So I've got the experience of doing that. The contacts have already been made. The proven leadership to set up the Coalition of Loudoun Towns for the Planning Commission to get everybody in there to continue fostering communication and ensure paths are there.
The inner workings of Lovettsville's town office hasn't made headlines of some other Loudoun towns recently. But how do you assess the staffing levels in town and the capabilities you have on staff? And then if we're looking for going to another town manager search, what qualities are you looking for in the next town manager?
Sure. So the town manager role is integral into this town. That's the one who runs the day-to-day operations of the town office. They run the staff, they make decisions for recommendations for hiring, and have those selections in there. Again, Sam Fintz has been an outstanding town manager, which is why the town's called him back multiple times. And hopefully we can keep him a little bit longer, but I think his wife's going to win that argument. The town manager qualities overall, we're looking for someone who's organized and someone who can negotiate, because there's plenty of negotiation efforts that are going to come through that the town manager is going to have to weigh in on along with the mayor. There's opportunities to save money as far as the trash contract that we have in place now. The current mayor and manager tried to end up negotiating with the towns to get a bulk purchase agreement with the trash provider in the area to drive down cost of what our trash collection fee is. Right now it's about 1.5 trucks, and driving that half a truck out here, the trash companies don't enjoy doing that. But if we can get a collective bargaining agreement along with the other towns and start driving down costs there's an opportunity to save some funds. So you're going to need a town manager who's got negotiation skills, management skills to continue to run staff, as well as ensure that they are using the staff appropriately to design a budget. This budget, based off the priorities provided by council, has been amazing, and a lot of that is due to the senior and experienced leadership that Sam Fintz has provided to the town. Everything from moving things over, everything from stopping the $100,000 into the utility funds, swapping over the utility antenna rates from the general fund to utility fund. We need someone who knows what they're doing overall. The issue and the problem with that is we are a small town. So drawing someone like Sam Fintz, who's been a town manager for Hollywood, Florida, is going to be difficult to do with the town budget that we have. The good news is we're going through, Sam has also instituted a training program where we've currently got staff that we're looking to get trained up to be able to take on the role of the town manager, and hopefully they'll apply for the interview process to select the town manager as well. But you're going to definitely need those key criteria to get a town manager in, and someone who can communicate effectively. Sam has been an outstanding example of one who's gone out to talk to businesses in town, even individuals who have been a little more aggressive in comments. He's gone out there along with myself to talk to individuals in town to ensure that they understand what's happening and why decisions have been made. So that's what I'd be looking for.
Town manager is the one who makes sure that the wishes of the town council are getting done. Current staffing levels, they're about what we can afford, just about what we can afford, and everybody in the town office wears 2 or 3 hats. So in an ideal world for efficiency, we'd have more people, but that's not going to be in the budget. So what we're doing is we're finding the best, most creative people we can find who can do these multiple operations. And as far as a town manager, we need another Sam. Has anybody finished the cloning process yet? Because we need another Sam. We need somebody who is adept at thinking about the intricacies of a municipal budget. We need somebody who is absolutely adept at making sure the tasks he's giving the current staff are things that they not only can handle, but can flourish at and succeed and make things better for the residents here in town. We want someone who's efficient. I mean, you've all read a job description, you've all been on an interview before, and you know the kind of qualities and the kind of people that you want to work with. We need to find another person, a Sam or a Samette, to come on out and help us keep Lovettsville being a fantastic place to live.
The town's done a good job. The minutes are up to date. You can watch the meetings on the computer and webcast. What are some other things the town can do to, specifically to improve transparency or engagement, as you mentioned, those type of things?
That's a great question. What can we do beyond the things that we've already done to improve communication? We need a new website. And guess what? They're working on that. They're working on it. It's coming together. They've got some money in the budget to spend on web development. I went on the town website just this morning to check on something and got sidetracked, as you do, and came to a few pages that haven't been updated in years. I think it's a clunky design, the thing that we're using right now. So the thing that we could do to make that better, first thing, get a webmaster. Get a website that's functional and efficient.
Sure. The good news is being on the Information Flow Committee. I was one of the driving forces to get the new website selected and driven through.
Thank you, Nick.
So it's good news that's already happening. This is outstanding. So the new website, we have a contract out with the new developer, and actually he's designed the website, and town staff is currently populating the new website to be pushed out soon. It is taking a little longer to populate and put information on that town website overall. There are other opportunities to continue to drive communication, and transparency is not, the town does an outstanding job of communicating. We've just got to find ways that make it easier for residents to be able to receive that information. The days of telling folks that you have to come to the meeting on Thursday nights at 7:30, or you're not going to get the information, is not going to work. People are very busy, especially nowadays. You've got households where people are working. Mom and dad are both working. They're running around. You've got Girl Scouts on one night. You've got baseball practice a couple of the same night, so mom and dad are split up going two different directions. The town and society is very busy at this time. So how do we get the information out to folks? I think there's better utilization, and while I was on the Information Flow Committee, I discussed starting a communications plan overall, where the town would end up doing, how do we communicate and what paths do we use? The Facebook account, I think, can be used a little more to continue to communicate and drive folks out to the meetings. The town board was an outstanding addition, where we end up adding up signs to let people know the events that are happening, emergencies that are happening, committee meetings, special events, all kinds of things that are happening. There are other opportunities as well. The website's going to be a great addition, but I think the biggest thing is getting out there to talk to folks and continue to have the engagement in the community, which was my earlier idea, which was when I ran for the appointment, when it was still cold. It's getting warmer, so I'm excited to get this kicked off soon, is having a planning commissioner, a council person, maybe the town manager, sitting over here in locations. Maybe it's Backstreet Brews, maybe it's somewhere else in town, maybe it's just sitting on the Walker Pavilion, and again, I'm playing Frisbee with my kids. If nobody comes by and asks questions, I get an afternoon to play with my kids. But there's opportunities to ensure that we've got engagement with the citizenry and open up some of those paths overall. So currently now, town staff does go through. We've got 3 types of meters here in town. We have the old meters where they actually have to go out, take the top lid of the crock off, actually read the meter itself. You've got a couple opportunities to goof up numbers in that path. You've got the one where they're reading the number, they're transcribing the number, and then when they're going into the actual computer system to type the number in. You also have meters where they're wand read, where town staff has to walk around with a wand and they tap the top of the meters to read. And then the last set we have are the actual drive-through meters, which are typically the newer ones on the town center side, anybody who's had a meter replaced recently. Roughly we've got 72 of the old meters in town and about 272 of the new meters. Everything else falls in between that range. As far as the estimation practices, I feel that's where a lot of the fluctuations in the billing has come from, is the estimations. in our quarterly billing cycle. So what council is currently looking at now, Kris, you mentioned it before, is the entire meter replacement across. Do we do it in a staged process? Do we do it all at once? Do we demand it off and do the $400,000 investment at one time to replace all meters with a remote read system, which will read the meters 4 times a day? That'll do multiple different things, as well as allowing the town staff to see if you have an increase in your water flow. And you'll be able to identify faster if there's a leak rather than waiting for a quarterly bill. I mean, heaven forbid you had a leak that first month of your quarterly billing cycle. You've got 2 months, 3 months before you'll find out that you had a leak going on, that your toilet was running upstairs, that something was happening. That's a significant bill. And anybody who's had a toilet run, that adds up pretty quickly. So there's big decisions in front of council now to decide which path we're going to go down. Again, are we going to rip out and replace all of them? Are we going to do it piecemeal? As well, council is also talking about outsourcing some of our billing for the water meters as well, so we can get to a monthly billing cycle, which would allow for, again, more transparency into the process, because it's a large amount of time for the town staff to end up gathering data entry and everything else. So I agree with you, Dean. I think the water issue was due to the estimations. It has gotten better. The good news is now that it's warmer and the crocs aren't buried under snow, I'm expecting the estimations to get a lot cleaner and actually less frequent as the town staff is able to get out in the warmer weather to go read the meters.
I'd like to add, Dean, that Lawrence, the treasurer, when he's preparing the bills to be sent out, when he notices that your past quarterly bill for the past several quarters was in the $200 range, and all of a sudden it's in the $600 range, he's going to flag that, and he's going to track it down, and he's probably going to make some adjustments to your bill to bring it more in line, especially if that $600 is...
So quarterly, like you say, there's a lot of water goes on the bridge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're working to make that a switch to do it on a monthly basis. But right now, when you think of the 800 households in Lovettsville and everything that we do for water billing is, I mean, we're stuffing envelopes in the town office. They are stuffing the envelopes. It's not efficient. For them to do that every month would mean so many other things being left undone. The current council, they're working to improve it, and I'm sure the next council is going to continue to improve it. The new meters are going to be a big help, a really big help. And they will pay for themselves over a period of a few years. Nice, right? So it's going to sound like a big chunk of change, but it'll be worth the investment. Thanks, Dean.
I'd like to add one more to that cost overall. So while it's a $400,000 investment, the manufacturers come back and said, we're expecting, to your point, the wonky side of adding new meters is going to be an increased usage read. Right?
Yep.
So if you have an old meter in town, your meter may only be reading 90% of your water usage. So there's going to be a potential increase there as well. But the town will be able to accurately report back to VDH, Virginia Department of Health, and other organizations who have us audit our water system to be able to get back in there. The good news is the manufacturers come back and said that what they typically see with the installation of the new ultrasonic meters overall is you have an increase in the usage reading, which should be able to cover the cost of the purchase as well as the implementation and rollout and actual maintenance of those meters going forward.
The gentleman that is looking at the water bills, if he sees a big fluctuation, is he notifying somebody to review it before that bill goes out? Is there some action on his side that he's doing presently?
As he explained it to me, yes. And the town is also very welcoming to anyone with a question on your bills.
Because I see a lot on Facebook, that's where you get all your information. And a lot of people are talking about, my bill was $300 or in the mid 200s and now it's $600. But there's no indication that anybody called and said, gee, we noticed that your bill went up by, $300 to $400, and so we're going to investigate it. So I was just real surprised if he is saying that, if anybody has experienced that.
So currently the town staff does work after the fact in some cases to come off and do dye tests and everything else to the toilets, or dye tests in your sinks, or also pressure checks to see how the water's flowing, to see if you've got a leak either outside or inside, or to determine what's going on and help to figure it out. That's one of the big reasons why this council has been trying to drive to get a better solution in place, is to get out of the estimation practices. Because again, that quarterly cycle is dangerous. If you happen to have something go off early on, you may not know about it until the end of the quarter, especially if they did an estimation. Let's say they did an estimation that first month. That happened to be an estimation month. you won't know until they actually go off and actually read the meters. So you could still have a 2-month gap overall. But the town staff works very hard, especially the utilities team under the utilities director. They work very hard, very dedicated staff to ensure that the water system is clean, in compliance, and everything else that we've got going on. So they do work with the town folks to identify issues where they can.
And if you think you have a leak in your system, you can call the town. They'll help you try to track it down. First they'll start and they'll lay there and they'll watch the meter on the ground and see if it's spinning faster than it should be spinning.
I heard that both of you mentioned projects and sidewalks and how that builds to like the livability in town. It brings people from out of town to want to come here, and it helps drive our economic base. I totally understand that. How do you see yourself as mayor paying for these projects and sidewalks, since a lot of the taxpayers in the town are already feeling a burden from our property assessment tax and our water bills?
Good news is that we're hoping to drop the Lovettsville tax rate by at least a penny in this year's budget. Lovettsville has gotten into the good practice of not building things that we don't have the money for. And by that I mean, if we can't save the money over time before we get into the project, if we can't get matching money from the county or state, we don't build it. It feels like a lot of money, but there's process and accounting practices in place right now to build up the different reserves, the different savings accounts, so that we can fund it. We're not just throwing dollars at a project. The council spends some time setting priorities, what they want to see improved, what they want to see done. And then the town manager looks at it and goes, you don't have the cash. You're going to have to postpone that project. And that's what they've been doing. And that's what I'd like to see them continue to do. I think if we all had some information about the projects as they're being prioritized, so that we're not constantly surprised by the next project that we didn't hear about, I think that'll help a lot.
So again, the good news is the 1 cent drop is become a priority from this council's, while I was on the appointment, from the property taxes. We've also had a driver to ensure, I brought up the fact that we needed to change some of the financial policies in town to ensure that we're funding reserves. That was not a priority always going forward. The town had funds going in different places. Me on the council, as well as a number of other council people, it wasn't just Nate Fontaine by himself. Other council people involved also came up with the idea of ensuring that we're funding our reserves at an appropriate amount to end up paying for projects coming in. We saw the increase in utility rates because the town was not willing to raise the utility rates over time. And that's why you saw the significant 39% increase over a short amount of time. It was because it came after we had Sam had come back, worked with some other folks, as well as vendors on the side to come in and say, hey, really, you don't have enough funds to end up replacing your water infrastructure was laid in 1972. Right? So right now, we've reached our life capacity. The good news is the transite lines are expecting to last a lot longer than the expected lifetime when they were put in originally. So as far as the town is currently now, the large priority in our fiscal policy is to ensure that we're putting money into reserves to continue to pay for projects. We'd rather spend money out of reserves than go borrow additional funds to go do things. And I think because of the changes that we've recently made, are going to continue to see the town in a better situation overall. So the point about planning these projects out and not being surprised, the town does a very good job of ensuring that these projects are now in the capital improvement plan going forward. The sidewalk is 2037 at this point, right? The water tower is 2026, a little later in the on the capital improvement plan schedule. The new development for the equalization basin for the other portions, the town has them planned out. We are appropriately budgeting for them overall to push out projects, and I think ensuring that we've got money in the reserves. To your point earlier, ensuring that we get grant funds where available are going to continue to drive to ensure those projects are well funded before they get placed in, and ensuring that we've got the operational maintenance tail on the backside. If you put new sidewalks in, you're going to have to maintain those sidewalks. If you put stormwater management in, you're going to have to maintain that stormwater management. If you put a water tower in, you're going to have to maintain the water tower. All these have an O&M tail to the back end of it that this council is working hard to ensure that we're funding for those. The meter replacement, if we rip them all out, they have a 20-year lifespan. In 20 years, we're going to have another discussion of ripping out all those water meters and putting brand new ones in as well. So this council, I'm happy to say, has been working really hard to ensure that we fund for the O&M tail. A little more detail.
If I were a stranger coming into this meeting it sounds to me like everything's great. I mean, you've said more, you said, for everything you might have hinted needs to be changed, there were 20 things that you said are okay. So what's the difference in your approach to being the mayor? I mean, do we have big problems or do we not? Or are we just going to be a caretaker when whoever wins? Say, we're doing great, so we'll just keep doing the way we're going.
Well, sir, may I ask you, do you feel we have big problems? I seriously, I want to know, because I want to make sure that I'm not living in a bubble and not hearing what's really important to all the constituents of Lovettsville.
No, I think we're doing great. I think the town's doing great. We got a great commission and council and the present mayor. But I'm just, I didn't see anything different between the two of you.
Well, that's good for Lovettsville then. Because, you know.
No, there are problems in town, right? Obviously, from knocking on everybody's door. And I've got a couple of the big developments left, but I've gone up and down Loudoun Street, Locust Street, Light Street, all the other streets here in town, Broadway, everything else. I've knocked on everybody's door. The biggest concern that we've got is the water rates, right? So the good news is council is developing a plan to try to address the water rates overall, right? That's the biggest issue that the town has to address at this point. By far, everybody's door I knock on is water rates. Right behind that, people are asking about transportation. And what's the transportation problem going to be in town? Because while we are out here by ourselves, you're going to continue to have county build out around us. You're going to have other people coming to us for annexation requests. There's a large tract behind the community center, which I would imagine at some point is going to come to us to ask about annexation to build new residential homes in there as well. There are problems in town that I think it requires experience and engagement to continue to drive towards solutions on those. And the good news is, I believe the council and the commission, you know, the award-winning Dogwood Award Commission, Planning Commission, has been doing a great job of trying to tackle these and get in front of these and rewrite where we were headed.
What I think what he's saying is, you guys sound so similar. How do we vote? What's the differences between you two? Where are your priorities that are differences that we know, hey, he's on this side, she's on this side, or that type of thing?
I understand your question. I want to talk then about my approach to leadership. I consider myself a servant leader, and I don't know if everybody's ever heard of that before. It's been around since the 70s. Servant leader is one whose goal is to serve first and put himself or herself last. I have tried to be a servant leader my entire adult life. When people come to me with an issue, I want to make sure that I hear them first and that I ask as many questions as I need to ask so that I fully understand to the best of my ability what you need. And then I'm going to work with you and help you identify the resources you need to solve your problem. Now, I'm also not one to waste too much time in making a decision. I'm going to gather the information that we need, and we're going to make the best decision with the information that we have at hand. And then we're going to look at that, and we're going to see if it worked. And if it didn't work, if an idea I had for something didn't work, then by God, let's get the next idea that does. Because it's not important that it was my idea. What is important is, as a servant leader, I have helped you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, or I've helped the town accomplish the things that it wants to accomplish.
That's a very good answer, and that's a good question overall. It's interesting, there's been a lot of talking points tonight, and the big difference between myself and Kris is the experience and engagement in town. I've served on most of the committees in town for a number of years. Again, I ran through everything else before, being on the Planning Commission, the Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission when we were awarded the top Planning Commission for the state of Virginia. I'm currently sitting on council, being involved with the Coalition of Loudoun Towns, being involved at the Board of Supervisors and talking to Gary Higgins and others. There's a significant gaps outside of just talking points of people who need to know what's going on in the town and having engagement over years and years of experience. coming to the town, working with the town, being in the events, helping run the events, helping set up the events, understanding the inner workings of this town. That's, I think, where your biggest difference is going to come in.
There was a public post calling for rioting because Warner workmen stated there was an anti-gun protest. Certain people from our community were easily influenced with his call to action and mobilized with weapons against other town members. I was reading correspondence in private pages as well as public pages and witnessed men with guns driving around town looking for a confrontation. I have evidence of screenshots. His hate and bullying are not hidden, and people running for local government have a duty to know who they give a platform that represents Lovettsville's values. This is just one example, as you both already know and have commented on publicly. I would like both candidates to answer. Fontaine, you were still willing to give him a platform and attend his forum and have not yet publicly reprimanded his continuous untrue and hateful comments. As the mayor is our first representation of Lovettsville, how do you keep hate out of town office function and forums? And what is your official stance on giving people with a known historical history of inciting aggression towards town and its people a public platform? And please note that I'm not asking about free speech. I'm asking about town safety and community cohesiveness.
My first stop was to sit there and talk to Warner workman individually. And I spent 3.5 hours in his office, walking through and talking about items that he had brought up in the past. And at the time, the big items were the theft of the town, or even the corruption in town to put sidewalks down Loudoun Street. Right? That discussion, we ended up going back and forth. It was a very fruitful discussion on my thoughts and where he was trying to go. And again, he has self-admitted that he's a pot stirrer in town. He writes comments to get people stirred up and drive the community and other things, right? So he's self-committed to that. That's what he has said. As far as having guns in the town, we do live in the state of Virginia, and you can open carry and you can conceal carry in the town of Virginia. I mean, in the state of Virginia, in the town as well. There's not much that a mayor or anyone else is going to be able to do to impact that, right? That's a state decision. As far as the speech and going after folks and calling for arms to go after individuals, that's absolutely incorrect. I mean, that's absolutely wrong if that was what actually happened. And the way you end up doing that is you ensure that Loudoun County police officers are aware of that, and they're out here for those facilities. As far as my attendance to the forum, that forum had been planned for a month in advance. All candidates were in agreement to attend. We had actually had discussions with the two moderators at the time that were going to do it. Everything was above board. Everything was copacetic. Everything, both parties all agreed all the way up until the very end that everything was above board. There was no partisan play going on, because partisan play doesn't have a stake in local elections and local politics here in town. What should matter is what you vote on at the local issues running in town. We were all on board. I had made a commitment not only to the community to ensure that I got the word out, but it's important to confront those individuals who have that stake. And when I was there, we ended up taking the microphone. We ended up running that meeting. The individuals who were there, from myself as a mayoral candidate to the town council representatives that were there, Warner Workman stood in the back of the room, and the members who were there answered questions for 3.5 hours from the public. All public questions. So there was not a forum that was provided to Warner to have any discussion on those. Those questions came strictly from the public for 3.5 hours. Everything that you've heard tonight, from water rates to transportation to property taxes to priorities for the town and everything else. So you address the untruths, and you address statements that are made head on, in my opinion. You have to go confront those individuals and talk to them. I'm not a public Facebook poster. I don't post on Facebook. That's just not what I do. My wife says all the time that, what if your gravestone had the last thing you said on Facebook? Right? I mean, truly, that's why I don't post things on Facebook. Now I do now because I'm running for mayor, so unfortunately it's gotten me out of my spot to end up sure I'm posting things out there on Facebook about events coming up and everything else. But as far as discussions on issues and everything else overall, it is a better venue to have it in a public event, a public space, where you can end up talking to those individuals and working out those problems that you have with them overall.
I'm simply going to say that I will not give hate a forum or a platform. Full stop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a comment about that.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Oh, here we go.
Well, only because, the comment was made about, pot stirrers and stuff, but there's several in this room that are on the same level. Everyone keeps giving Warner this, basically fuel. He has nothing to do with any of this. He had nothing to do with the last forum. He's, just like Nate said, sat in the back, let everybody do what they had to do. I mean, I guess my question is, why did you back out last minute?
It's an excellent question.
Because if you couldn't get along with him to come to a forum, how are you gonna get along with everybody that has to do with this town, this county, this state?
That's an excellent question, and I'm really glad that you've asked it. Can I ask your name?
Aaron?
Hi, Aaron. I'm Kris. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's an excellent question, and I'll tell you what happened. I have never been, if I've been on a Facebook group, the Real Lovettsville or 20180,
Yep.
if I was on those, it was for a hot minute. I haven't been on them for years and years and years, so I haven't followed anything that's happened on those pages. Consequently, the only thing I knew about Mr. Workman were the things that people would tell me that he had said about me. Okay? But I'm thinking, it's Facebook. But, okay. I think I've met him in person 3 times. And each time I met him, it seemed a legitimate conversation. And he asked about setting up the forum for the mayoral candidates. And I said, sure, absolutely, I'll do it. Absolutely. And some time went by, and suddenly I realized that it had never been made a public event, and that only the people who were active on that group where he'd started the event could see it. I never saw a public event on Facebook, search though I might, until the week before the forum, when we reached out and asked him to make it a public event. Now, if I missed it, I apologize. I looked for it. If I couldn't, I didn't see it.
Okay.
So I asked him to make it a public event. And as soon as it was a public event, I started receiving screenshots. I started receiving stories of intimidation, not necessarily anybody that's in this room, but I cannot tell you the number of people who called me, who wrote to me personally, Aaron, to tell me how Warner had attacked them, their family, their livelihoods. Now, I still thought I could go ahead and do it. I wrestled with this like I have not wrestled with anything before. I still thought I could do it. And I thought that by going, I would be standing up to him. I really did. And then, when I put myself in the shoes of the people who were talking to me, and I saw it from their point of view, I was sending out the signal that I was standing with him. Now, wait, I'm not quite done. I realized that I had made a commitment to go to that forum. And I realized that I was breaking that commitment. I also knew that by breaking that commitment, all of the heat of the decision to not go would come on me. And I would be the one to deal with the fallout and to take the comments and the responses for that. And I decided that I would go ahead and accept that fallout rather than take an action that would fall out on so many other people in the community.
I guess my concern would be that how are other people going to influence you if you do end up our mayor? Are they gonna have that much of an impact on something
Yeah.
that, but you see from the outside
Sure.
looking in, it
Absolutely.
looks,
Absolutely. I totally understand.
you know.
When I made the decision not to go on to the forum, I was acting as a private citizen. And I'm still a private citizen. My responsibility, if I am elected mayor, shifts dramatically. I can talk to Warner. I can talk to anybody. I honestly can. But I'll do it one-on-one as mayor. I'll do it in a public forum meeting at a town-sanctioned event. Does that help? I understand that people are not happy about it, but if I take the heat and I lose the election because I didn't show up at a Warner Workman-sponsored forum, I can still sleep at night.
See, I have a real issue with it being a Warner Workman sponsored. All he did was just get everybody together to have it. And it's a disappointment that I didn't see you or any of the others, yourself, there at that forum. I was there. Warner said, hello, thank you for coming. These are the people. That was it. And I take resentment if it is played that the people that went to that forum were based on hatred, because now I'm starting to get insulted. And I don't like that.
I understand.
It was a very professional, polite, and good gathering that was done way above board, very informative. It presented all the candidates in their professional experience. And so I don't like being thrown under the bus because I or some others went to this forum and it was based on hatred. There was nothing said about that, nothing at all. And in fact, before I went, I was told that when you go, you're going to see Kris's picture plastered all over there. I went specifically looking for that. There were probably 6 pictures, maybe. It was one of Nate and one of you. And that was at the door coming in, announcing these are the candidates for mayor. And there were maybe one of each on the table and one at the podium. That was it. It wasn't plastered all over the place. It wasn't done in an insult manner in any form. I found that comment to me more pot stirring than all this other. So again, when you talk about that forum, be very careful how you present that. Because when you say it was based on hatred, it sounds like we all went there, you know, carrying banners and torches and forks.
So that's exactly why I put my hand up. The minute you said that. Personally, nobody in here knows me except my neighbors. I mind my business. I don't post anything on those pages. But I know what they're about. I read it. I see it. I don't agree with it. I do not stand for bullying. I do not stand for hate. So please don't assume because my presence at that was a supporting of his business. That right there, that judgment is very, very concerning to me. If you're going to be a mayor, please don't prejudge. I went there to represent my opinions. And I went there to ask questions. I hoped you were going to be there because I had questions for you. I'm sorry. I felt, just by saying that, I'm like, wow, I had no intention or a preconceived notion of anything like that. I don't like the stuff I see, but I still showed up. I showed up for my town. I really wish you had too. And that's all I'm going to say. I just wish you were there.
I just found it very odd that you were in agreement and moving forward all the way up to
48 hours prior.
48 hours, and then you had this epiphany that
Because some
you know
people
you
do not
were.
side with bullies.
It was a difficult decision.
Some people think you're a bully. This is the
Well,
way the world works.
so I think
Well,
we're going sideways.
But I think what's concerning to people like myself who didn't attend the forum is that obviously the town is so divided. How do we move forward? How do mayoral candidates such as yourselves bring a town together and move forward?
That's an
Have you?
excellent question.
No, but truly.
How do I do it?
Obviously, your leadership skills are in question because you didn't attend.
Mhm.
You're talking about servant leadership
Mhm.
and you didn't attend. You're offering an apology that's a little lackluster. I think we're asking you, what will you do? And I think the question for me is, what would you do going forward to bring this divide together?
I'd make sure that I had a lot of conversations with everybody on, no matter where they stand, no matter what they do, no matter where they live in town. I do my best to understand where they're coming from and what they need and how I could help them get there. The forum for me with Mr. Workman just became untenable from what I was learning about him, and I didn't feel I could trust him to run a forum. And part of that is because I don't know the man. But the people that I trust were warning me drastically about it. It's the best I can do. I always try to do the best I can do and to act with the integrity that I have the best way that I know how. And I'm sorry if it falls short, but I will always try to do the best thing for the most people that I can.
I think Kris and I both, neither one of us are going to be for hate, neither one of us are going to be for anything else, right? That's just the way it is. We just have a different way of approaching it. I approach it head on, that's what I'm going to go after. And we do that, right? We do that by taking the event, and there was over 50 people who attended the event. The only family members were there were my mother, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my wife, and that was it. Everybody else was not family. Everybody else were citizens who attended. And it was important to show that we went to this event to ensure, and we had discussions before about ensuring that I told you that if it was going to go sideways, and I was going to step up and stop it. And we had that discussions before, the night before, the Tuesday before, in Warner's office. I'd asked a meeting for all of us to get together, along with the two moderators. And everybody had said how above board the event was. Everybody in this meeting had said how above board the meeting was, how this meeting had been planned well, everything was going well, and the discussions that were taking place. I made a post a couple weeks ago talking about, and I think you agree with me, this is a sideline issue that I don't think needs to be in the discussions overall in the town. Unfortunately, it's taking up way too much time from the true issues that are happening in town. I can answer your question as far as the divide in town, the number of doors I've knocked on, which is most of the town at this point. There is not a big hatred and everything else going through town. You would think there would be. I did have one individual who flat out told me, "I'm not talking to you," and slammed the door. But that's all. I didn't even get a chance to say hello. Right? So I don't know what that was. Right? So I said, "Well, have a good day, have a blessed day," and I walked on to the next house. There was no opportunity to continue the discussion. So the divide in town we talked about even before the event in the back of the room. There are people who are on Facebook who are stirring the pots, making discussions, driving things to end up causing problems in town. The biggest way you handle a lot of that is you confront them, or you end up what most of the town are doing for the people who are spreading hatred or spreading or dividing the town and everything else. The biggest way you do that is you can remove that by blocking individuals on Facebook, right? A lot of the voice has been taken away from individuals in town who have been seen as controversial because those accounts have been blocked and removed. I had a different viewpoint as well. I mean, myself running for mayor, I think I had to show how I would end up addressing these things, and that was by going head on to the individual who was setting up the forum. I hope that we can put this one aside and get back to the town issues overall, because unfortunately, we've given that individual a forum again by bringing it up here, right? We're adding credence and discussions on there. I think we all agree, neither one of us want hate, neither one of us are for that. We would all stop it where we see it. I would go ahead and confront it, and we've got other paths. So I'm hopeful we have other questions that we can go through with issues towards the town to go from there. But as far as the hate, I can tell you right now, if you get out of behind Facebook and you go out and you talk to people, the hatred is not here in town. It's a complete different story. Everybody talks about all the things in town and how things are working out. The Upper Loudoun Little League baseball games, the Mayfest coming up. Memorial Day weekend ceremonies. Everybody's so excited for the weather to get warmer and get outside and start talking to your neighbors again. I know for my little community, my little pocket, what we nicknamed Das Loop at the bottom of the hill in Eisentown.
Das Loop is not getting a gate, okay?
Anyway, we joke, I mean, we have events for everything. So Memorial Day weekend, we're going to have an event there, and we end up, the entire loop comes out and talks to them. And there is a very diverse group in there. You have folks from all over the place. We've got individuals from South Africa, we've got individuals from Tunisia, we've got individuals from the islands and everything else. The hatred that people see in town, unfortunately, is a small pocket of the population who are driving the discussion, and it's largely manufactured. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to either, again, you can control that message, and you can control what you see on Facebook. Well, wait, I mean, that's what I'd like to get to, is like, and we both agree, the hatred in town is in a lot of cases manufactured, and it's coming from a small pocket of population. Look at the names that are coming up repeatedly, and you can control that, especially on Facebook. You can remove that platform, if you so choose, to block those individuals, and you'll never see what they're posting again. You can continue to have the discussions, but driving and having those discussions in this meeting space is giving a forum to something that is really, in reality, walking around talking to folks. There is not a big divide for the folks inside of town as far as hatred and everything else in town. Everybody is going to stop and stand up for the residents in town.
I'm standing up for myself. She just turned around and pointed at me and called me hate.
What?
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you. As a mayor, do you support her actions?
Well, you just lied. I didn't say anything about
Where's the hater?
I didn't say anything.
Can we,
about
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we? I'd like to get back to the questions that we've got overall. I think we've covered the forum pretty well. Hopefully, we were able to answer your question overall and go from that perspective. Hopefully we can move on
I would like to go forward if it's possible at this point.
Nate's my son, so.
So glad you're here.
But and he didn't me to do this. But one of the things in this time and age of hate, where family members are on Facebook, blocking Facebook and things like unfriending Facebook, that's what you call it. I just think, I'm just so proud of both of you for the campaigns you have run. And,
we both made it from the very beginning.
We did. Nate and I sat down very early on and we said we're both going to run for mayor.
With our significant others. They're pointing at me saying they
Well, yeah, and then all those lovely people helping out, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, it was
But yeah, thank you. And thank you for the way you've run your
You too.
campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've already actually made your closing statements, but you're welcome to make some more closing statements.
Once I stop learning, I may as well just go home and live under a rock. Fortunately, I'm not afraid to learn. I'm not afraid to correct my mistakes. And I want to say that Lovettsville is the greatest place I've ever lived. And I would look forward to the opportunity to serve this town and give something back to the town that has given my family and me pretty much everything. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Vote on May 1st for the candidate of your choice. Lovettsville is going to be just fine.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, right? I think the town's on the right path, right? And I think we continue going down those portions. So again, thank you all for coming out to this event. It was a larger turnout than I was expecting, which is I'm ecstatic
Your
about
mom
that.
notwithstanding.
My mom notwithstanding, right? So I cheated. I added one. So
You added one. Yeah.
But no, what I'm asking folks to do is ensure that you do look into experience and engagement in the town. I've mentioned it a couple different times here tonight. It's important to end up having the mayor, someone who's intimately aware of what goes on in the town, the committees that are run, how the budget is set, coordination and development with the county, setting up the coalition of Loudoun towns with other towns involved. So I've got emails and everything else from mayors and other councils from across Loudoun County. We even had a reach out from Brunswick at one point as well. This is an important election coming up. There's a lot of items. There's a lot of expenditures that are on the table to discuss at this point. So please continue. We're still in the budget cycle, so I'm going to make a plug for the council. Please continue to come out to the budget meetings to let us know what your priorities are. I think we've got a pretty good idea, but we need to make sure that we've got your input on that as well. Everything's out there on the website from that perspective. As far as experience and leadership styles, I mean, I've got currently as a government employee, my smallest contract at work is $60 million. So I've got experience running large budgets, running a large staff of well over 40 people. If I include contractors, it goes up a little more, a full set of contractors. It's important to make a decision on May 1st, in my opinion, based off of experience and engagement in the community, setting up, being out there working all the events, attending all the planning commission meetings for years, the council meetings for years, moving, again, everything from the serious stuff I just went through all the way down to participating in town events and being a 3-time pioneering champion of Lovettsville, right? There's all kinds of things in the engagement in the community. That's what I'm asking folks to look at. I'm not doing a 4-Pete. I retired this year. I either knew I had an issue or there was no competition in town. I don't know which one it was, because it's a big gap. In fact, I was joking with the individual from Olivet Church who lives over in Park Place, and we were joking back and forth about how he goes, "You made it real easy to be the judge because you're done, and the next person behind you still has half a pie to go." So I think I might have had a problem. So please, thank you all for this event. Again, Kris, thank you again for the agreements we made earlier on and sticking to it.
Thank you.
We got 2 more weeks. You will no longer see Nate Fontaine's face on your signs. In 2 weeks, I'll go around and pick them all up, especially the big one down there coming into town.
Yeah.
You only have to look at one big Nate Fontaine head, and that's this one. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you. Good night.